Do you still keep your succulents in boring plant pots? Why not try this instead and create a mini desert in a bowl to house all of your cacti and succulents in a slice of nature? I'll be sharing some valuable advice on how to set this up to be long lasting while still looking good, so let's get started. I'll be using a bowl with a wide opening for this terrarium, as cacti and succulents don't want too much humidity, so we want to leave them open to the air. We will be using leca for drainage as it's lightweight and porous. However, if you want a cheaper alternative, you can use gravel or stones that you find outside. For the substrate, we will need a special mix for these plants, as we need it to hold less water than usual. To do this, we will be using 2 parts akadama with 1 part cocoa coir and 1 part worm castings. You can see a small amount of sand is mixed in here as well, and that's because I reused some of this substrate from a different succulent bowl. For the hardscape, I'm keeping it simple with this beautiful piece of red rainbow rock that I picked up from my local aquarium store. These places, whilst aimed at underwater scapes, still have great hardscape and other materials for our terrascapes. For the first cacti, I'll be using this opuntia, which I removed the excess soil from and experimented with different positions. However, whilst I love the look of this plant, it was just too large for this setup and would be best somewhere else. Never be afraid to remove plants from your scapes, as it will be hard to change this later if you think they don't look right. Instead, I'll be going into the middle with this smaller cacti, which is a much better fit. I love the small tentacle-like shape of the body of this cactus, and I think it will make a great fit into the centre. I'm now making another hole alongside it and going in with the fatter cactus to add some variation. If you change the variety of cacti in the bowl, it will look far more natural and diverse than a bunch of the same type. I'm now going to add this succulent onto the left side. You can see that I'm also experimenting with this bridge on the right that I may choose to use later on. The next cactus is too large to fit in, so I'm going to split it up into 2 sections. Be very careful when doing this, as cacti obviously have very sharp spikes which may hurt your hand. I'm placing each section on the 2 opposite ends, putting the larger piece towards the back and the smaller towards the front. Doing this creates better perspective in the planting and stops larger plants from blocking the smaller ones. I'm now going to plant in this parlor palm, which isn't a succulent or cacti, but should work fine in the setup. It was spare from another tank, so it needed a home, and there's no harm in trying it here. I've put it in the back behind the cactus from before, and I'm covering it up with substrate. Before I move on any further, I'm giving the cacti a quick water. I'm doing this directly from the base and only adding a little. Currently, this is not looking like much of a desert because of the brown substrate. So now that we've planted all of the cacti, I'm going to top dress the substrate with a layer of sand. This is the equivalent of adding moss into a tropical terrarium, as leaving just exposed soil can make a terrarium look unfinished. To finish the top dressing, I'm spreading the sand out so there's an even layer across the floor. I'm now going to start adding in some extra decoration, starting with this mini bridge. Following this, I'll place in this small piece of driftwood onto the left side to look like an old tree. I'll now connect each edge of the bridge with a stone path, weaving through the remaining blank areas of the sand. This will make the terrarium look better in general and will set it apart from the other succulent and cacti displays you see where the plants are all that's on display. I'm now going to temporarily remove the bridge so I can create a mini river out of white sand going underneath the bridge. I carefully spreaded out the sand and added back in the bridge over the top. Never be afraid to go back and fine tune these areas. I'm layering more sand back on top here as I think the river was getting way too wide towards the end. To add more detail onto the river, I'm adding mini white rocks along the edges, which I played around with positioning in different spots. This left the detailing pretty much complete. To finish off, I also added this extra piece of driftwood into the gap between the 2 cacti. These mini Lego figures are also a nice touch, but that's up to you whether you want to include them or not. I'm super happy with how this turned out, and I truly believe it looks like a mini slice of the desert. I hope this gives you some inspiration for your own succulents and cacti instead of leaving them in their boring plant pots. However, Personally, I prefer creating tropical terrariums so you can get a more colourful and interesting variety of plants with smaller leaves and different shapes, so click on this video next to learn how to create a mini tropical terrarium of your own.